Hello, welcome back. I know it's been a while since my last video. After looking over the last one that I made, I realized I did say I was going to go a little bit into more detail about constraints. And I realized I really only want to go through two of them, two of the constraints. So what I have in my scene, I've got my outliner open already. If you're trying to follow along, you can make similar shapes here and then go up to Window, down to Outliner to get the outliner open. Now, if you look in the scene here, I've got the ground, which is just there because I've got what I called elevator shaft, what I called an elevator control, gun, and gun control. So the reason I've used curves as my controls is because when you render, curves won't show up. So when I render this scene, you'll see the ground, you'll see the gun, you'll see the elevator and the elevator shaft, but you won't see the controls. So if I just click render, you can see, especially here, there's nothing next to the elevator. Now, I'm going to start with this one, with my gun. Now, I've set the pivot point about to where I want the gun to pivot around. Okay, so I could aim this manually. This is kind of like a mortar or an AA gun or something. I could aim it manually and try and get it positioned in the right spot. Or I can give it a control. So I select, I'm going to hit Q to just get my selection tool on. I'm going to select the circle first, what's going to be the control, and then I'm going to hold shift and click on what is going to be controlled. So the gun will be selected second. I'm going to go up to my polygon menu subset, or you can hit F3 as a keyboard shortcut on Windows PC here. I apologize. I'm going to the animation submenu, which is F2. We're going to go over to constrain. Now I'm going to go down to the second one. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to go to an aim constraint. So what that did, since I had the control selected first and then what was going to be controlled selected second, now when I move this circle around, it will aim my gun at it, hence it's an aim constraint. The nice thing about this is you can move it further away, so realistically I could move this constraint, or I could move this control right over whatever he's shooting at, and he's guaranteed to be aimed at it. Okay, so the computer will take care of rotating and getting this pointed in the right direction. The second type of constraint I'm going to look at is especially useful for doing things where you have objects that are inside of objects. For instance, if I wanted to move my elevator up and down without using a control, essentially I would either have to open my outliner, which I don't normally keep open all the time, and go to elevator control, or I mean go to elevator, sorry, and then move it up and down. Or even worse, if I didn't have my outliner open, I could draw a selection around all the objects, hold control or command, deselect the ground, deselect the shaft, and then move my elevator. Okay, that's a pain in the neck. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to have my outliner open for this, just because I did use I went into the curves palette and used a square, and that's made up of a bunch of different lines. So essentially I'm going to go into the outliner, and I'm just going to pick one. So I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to delete the other ones just so they don't get in my way. Alright, now I've got this one, which I'm going to unparent to this elevator control group. I'm going to delete that one. I'm going to rename this elevator control. Close enough. Okay, so first I select that. Now comes the fun part. In the outliner, since these are right next to each other in the hierarchy, I can hold shift and it will select both of them. If, for instance, this was not next to it in the hierarchy, I could select elevator control, hit shift, and then I get the shaft in there too, in which case I can hold control and deselect it, whatever. So I'm actually going to move them next to each other. Select the control first, then what is going to be controlled, go up to constrain, and I'm going to go point, a point constraint. So now, if I select the elevator control in my scene and move it up and down, the elevator moves up and down. One thing to note is you can also move it sideways, but that's not helpful in this situation. It just means wherever you move the control, your object is going to be moved as well. So you can see that I've got an elevator I can go up and down with. So those are the two I use probably the most. Maybe, maybe not, but we'll be using those again later, so I figured I'd have a little intro to those. The aim constraint's useful for aiming stuff. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, especially if you're doing a character with a gun, you know, moving arms around, walk cycles, stuff like that. The point constraint is useful for a lot of things, actually. I probably use it most for embedded objects or objects that are inside of other objects, just because it makes my life easier. I don't have to go open the outliner, I don't have to select a bunch of stuff and then deselect it. So play with those, and yep, in the next we'll get into basic skeletons with some terribly simple examples, and then hopefully we'll move on to, you know, more realistic stuff that you might actually use. So stay tuned.